2.3, converting between fractions and decimals. There are two types of decimals. Over here we have 1.5, negative 0.25, and 10.284. This type here is called terminating. It's called terminating because it has an end. It's a definite end to the decimal. This one over here, we have negative 1.3, dot, 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 negative 0.27272727, dot, 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 dot. Now, those dots signify that this decimal is repeating. It's a repeating decimal. And how we write that is we write a line or a dash over the repeating part. The 3's are repeating, and in the bottom one, the 2 and the 7 are repeating. Okay, we are going to write fractions and mixed numbers as decimals. And the first thing you want to do is you have to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. So say we have 3 3/4. We need to then change that to an improper fraction by multiplying the denominator by the whole number. Denominator by the whole number, 4 times 3. And then we're going to add that to the numerator. 4 times 3 plus 3 is 15, right? Remember that? Denominator times a whole number plus the numerator. Now this is now our new numerator, and we keep our original denominator, so the answer is then going to be 15 over 4. So we have now changed our mixed number into an improper fraction, and we now need to change that into a decimal. And to do that, we have to then divide the numerator by the denominator. So 15 over 4 is the same thing as saying 15 divided by 4. 15 divided by 4. I add a decimal point and a couple of zeros, so I know what my decimal is going to look like. All right, time for you to write in the first page of your notes. There are a bunch of fill in the blanks. You're going to write about terminating decimals, repeating decimals, and how to write fractions and mixed numbers as decimals. And now we're going to write a terminating decimal as a fraction. Remember, a terminating decimal is one that ends. So we're going to write negative 0.26 as a fraction in simplest form. That means the first thing we need to do is we need to read that decimal aloud. It reads negative 26/100ths, right? So then if you just read it, you can write it exactly what you just said, negative 26/100ths. Now, as a side note, you notice that you have two decimal places. That means you're going to have 2 zeros on the bottom, right? If you were to have 0.281, you have 1, 2, 3 decimal places, so then you know there are going to be 3 zeros on the bottom. Okay, now we need to simplify that. We know that 26 and 100 have the factor of 2 in common, so we can divide 26 by 2 and 100 by 2. That means our answer is then going to be negative 13 over 50. And if our decimal was negative 2.26, how we write that as a fraction? We would simply just make sure we had that 2 in the front as our whole number. All right. Now it is time for you to do 3 practice problems. The second page of your notes is actually just goes over and reiterates what we just talked about in writing a terminating decimal as a fraction. All right, so you have the 3 practice problems, and the first one we want to write 2 1/4 as a decimal, and we know that this is a mixed number, so the first step is to change it into improper, and we do that by multiplying the whole number and the denominator and adding that to the numerator, and keeping that all over our original denominator. So 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1 is 9. So 2 and 1/4 is the same as 9/4. Now to change that into a decimal, we need to divide the numerator divided by the denominator, right? 9 divided by 4. 9 divided by 4. Numerator goes inside the box, denominator is outside. All right, on this one, we're going to write 1/3 as a decimal. So remember, 1/3 is the same thing as saying 1 divided by 3. 1 divided by 3. 1 divided by 3. Now I'll tell you on this one, this was actually is a repeating decimal. So your answer should have a dash or a line over part of the decimal. And this last one, writing a negative 0.34 as a fraction, remember that there are two ways to do this one. The first one is to read it aloud to yourself and say negative 34, negative 34 1/100ths, right? And then you could just simply write that. Or you could see that there are two decimal places, so you know also there are going to be 2 zeros at the bottom, right? Okay, so now we're left with negative 34/100, but now we need to simplify, and that you have to think about what number can go into both of them. I would first try dividing the top by 2 and the bottom by 2 and seeing if that creates your simplest form. All right, and that is it for 2.3.